She smiled just before she pushed me. Not a grin, not a smirk, just a polite, rehearsed, corporate smile. The kind they teach you in PR school. We were alone on the rooftop terrace of a 68-story high-rise, wind whipping her hair around like she was in some shampoo commercial. She leaned close, hands on my shoulders, whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry it has to be this way." Then she shoved. Funny thing about gravity. It doesn't feel like falling, not at first. Just feels like you're floating wrong. But I didn't hit pavement. Because Avery grabbed me. Now, before we get to that moment, the part where my granddaughter saved my life, we need to rewind just a little. Just a few months back, when my bones ached in the morning and Gina served me cold oatmeal like it was a gift from heaven. I lived in the guest room of the house I'd secretly bought 20 years ago with lottery winnings no one knew about. Not Gina, not Weston, not Noah, especially not Noah. I told them I rented the place, paid them rent every month, transferred money into Gina's account like a well-trained tenant. That kept the questions down. Gina liked to think she was doing me a favor, always reminded me of how generous she was, letting me live in her house, eat her oatmeal, breathe her filtered air. But she didn't know I owned the walls she painted beige. Didn't know the money I paid her was just shuffling between my own accounts. She didn't know about the $2 million compounding in accounts she couldn't touch. And she certainly didn't know that her own daughter was the only one I ever considered telling. Avery was 19, working part-time, carrying herself like a woman who knew what she'd inherited but wasn't in a hurry to claim it. Not the money. I mean the bloodline. She had Vivian's backbone and my instincts. And the day I caught her slipping $40 into my desk drawer after hearing her mother complain about covering my expenses, I knew. She was mine. I'd been living a double life for decades. Honest old man on a pension by day, secret millionaire with a hoarded past by night. Avery wasn't fooled. She saw the cheap radio I fixed with vintage solder. Saw the stack of books I bought myself when I claimed they were from the library. She noticed everything. Then one day, Gina said she wanted to take me out. Just the two of us. "Nice dinner," she said. On me. She drove me to downtown New Orleans. Parked in a valet-only high-rise where Noah's company had some new consulting client. Said we could use the rooftop restaurant. Their treat, she added with a wink. The place was tall. Real tall. The kind of tall that makes your ears pop. But when we got up there was no restaurant. Just wind, steel, and sky. She held my elbow like she was helping me admire the view. Then she dropped the act. Her grip tightened. She leaned close. And she said, soft as a prayer, "You've had a good run, Dad. But it's time." Then came the shove. And then came Avery. How she knew we'd be there, I still don't fully know. But when I felt myself tipping backward, when the weight of gravity started to take me, a small set of fingers clamped around my wrist. My shoulder nearly dislocated from the jolt. My feet scrambled against steel grating as the wind roared. Avery screamed my name, and Gina screamed hers. By the time security arrived, alerted by Avery's frantic call before she even parked her car, Gina was crying crocodile tears and blaming me for losing balance. She swore I slipped. I told them she tried to kill me. They filed it as an accident. No cameras. No witnesses. Just family. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital with a dislocated shoulder and bruised ribs. Avery visited every day. Gina came once, brought me a card with no note, and asked how much was left in my life insurance. The moment I got discharged, Avery wheeled me out into the sunlight and whispered, "What's our move, Grandpa?" And I smiled, because now the lie was exposed. The war had started, and I wasn't fighting it alone. I didn't go home after the hospital. I went to a hotel off the interstate. A dingy place with paper-thin walls and a front desk clerk who didn't look up from his phone when I checked in under a fake name. Avery booked the room and paid in cash. She even brought me a burner phone, like she'd been preparing for this longer than I had. "You need rest," she said, setting a paper bag of groceries on the chipped dresser. "And space. They think you're coming back home." I smiled at her like a proud coach watching his quarterback break through the line. They think a lot of things. She peeled off her hoodie and sat on the edge of the motel bed. "You ready to tell me everything?" So I did. Told her about the lottery in '05. How I'd driven across state lines to claim it under an alias. How I stashed it across 3 banks under a web of LLCs that even Noah's audit-happy mind wouldn't untangle. I told her I'd bought the house for $600 grand and pretended I was just a tenant ever since. Avery didn't interrupt. She just nodded like it all made perfect sense. I wanted to tell you sooner, I said, but I didn't want to make you choose between blood and truth. She looked at me like I'd just insulted her GPA. You think I wouldn't have picked you? I didn't think you should have to, I replied. Silence fell for a moment, warm and full of everything we weren't saying. Then she cracked a grin. You know, she said, we could take them for everything they've got. We already have, I said. They just don't know it yet. That night, I didn't sleep much. The bed was stiff, the air smelled like bleach, and my shoulder ached every time I moved. But my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Betrayal will do that. It clears the fog. In the morning, Avery returned with coffee and a plan. She'd pulled Gina's laptop while she was out and found the password scribbled on a sticky note. Noah forever. I almost choked on my donut. That man had the charm of a tax audit. Turns out, Gina had been poking around a few of my old bank statements. Not the hidden ones. Those were airtight, but a decoy checking account I kept low on purpose. She was tracking every withdrawal, every deposit, every penny. She was building a case, trying to prove I couldn't take care of myself, laying the groundwork for conservatorship. Or worse, she's been talking to a lawyer, Avery said, flipping the screen toward me. Look, there it was. A thread of emails between Gina and a probate attorney. She wasn't just trying to push me down the stairs of life. She was setting it up to look like it was for my own good. Power of attorney. Full financial control. All my assets in her hands, including the house she didn't know I already owned. She thinks I'm going to die quietly, I said, sipping lukewarm coffee. She's going to be disappointed. We didn't strike fast. That would have been emotional. Sloppy. And I don't do sloppy. We started small. Quiet. I transferred the house deed to a fresh LLC, one registered in Delaware, where no one asks too many questions. Then I rerouted the rent payments, those fake rent transfers I made every month, to a different account. Avery set up a forwarding address for the LLC's legal mail. Everything moved like gears in a watch. Then we waited. 2 weeks passed. I stayed at the motel, working through my old contacts, calling in favors that hadn't aged a day. One of my old electrician buddies hooked me up with a private investigator. Former FBI. Sharp eyes, quieter mouth. Just keep tabs on Gina and Noah, I told him. I don't need dirt. I just need patterns. He delivered. Turns out, Noah wasn't just watching my electric bill like a hawk. He was in debt. Quiet debt. Stock margin calls, high-interest credit cards, a failed real estate flip-out in Baton Rouge. The man was financially drowning and clinging to Gina like she was a raft made of $100 bills. They're planning something, Avery said one night. A big ask. That's why she pushed you. She thought she could accelerate the timeline. She's about to find out I'm not on her schedule. The big ask came on a Thursday. Avery showed up at the house for dinner, alone. Played it cool. Acted like everything was normal. Sat through Noah's budget lectures and Gina's passive-aggressive digs about college kids and their opinions. Then Gina made her move. We've been thinking, she said, spearing a piece of overcooked chicken. It's time Grandpa signed over some responsibilities. Financial ones. Maybe even medical. Oh, Avery asked, calm as a sniper. Why now? Because he's clearly slipping, Noah said, setting his fork down like a judge passing sentence. He went off the grid for 2 weeks. Didn't even tell us where he was. He was in the hospital, Avery replied, deadpan. After someone almost pushed him off a building. Gina blinked. That was an accident. Sure, Avery said, sipping her water. Just like how you're accidentally bankrupt. The air got thick. What did you say? Noah asked. Avery shrugged. Nothing. Just thinking out loud. By the next morning, Gina was panicking. She started making calls. Her lawyer, the bank, even Weston. Weston, of course, wanted in. Dad's losing it, Gina told him. We have to act before he gives everything to that little brat. It was a mistake. She said it on speakerphone, and Avery recorded it. Now we had proof. Audio. Motive. The whole ugly outline. That's when I walked into the house. Unannounced. Looking like the ghost of a man they'd already buried. Gina jumped. Noah dropped his coffee. Weston, who'd shown up for whatever scraps he could grab, just stared at me like I was a ghost with bad timing. Thought I'd come home, I said. You? You're not supposed to, Gina stammered. Supposed to what? I asked. Be alive? Be rich? Be smarter than all three of you combined? They looked at each other like rats trying to decide who jumped ship first. I own this house, I said, tossing a folder on the kitchen counter. Have since 2006. You've been paying me fake rent while I watched you siphon off my pension and plot your little heist. Noah opened the folder. Read the deed. His face went the color of drywall. I'm not pressing charges, I added. Not yet, but the next move's mine. Then I turned to Weston. If you call me for money again, I'll forward your number to the IRS. He swallowed hard. As I left, Avery followed me out. Next phase? She asked. I smiled. Now we make them beg. It started with the locks. Nothing dramatic. No crowbars. No midnight drama. Just a locksmith showing up at 9 a.m., sharp with a work order signed by the rightful owner, me. By noon, Gina, Noah, and their minimalist coffee table were locked out of what they thought was their home. They called the police. The officer looked at the deed, looked at me, then looked at Gina's screaming face and said, "Ma'am, he's well within his rights." I was sitting on the porch with a cold soda, watching the whole thing unfold like a matinee. "You can't do this," Gina shrieked. I took a sip and said, "I just did." Noah tried reasoning, but his voice cracked halfway through. "There's got to be a misunderstanding. This house was our family home." I raised an eyebrow. Which family? The one that tried to murder me, or the one that saved my life? They stood there, sweating in the driveway, holding a box of clothes like they were starring in a reboot of The Pursuit of Patheticness. Eventually, Weston showed up in his SUV, saw the scene, and wisely kept the engine running. "Can we at least get the rest of our stuff?" Gina asked, voice shaking. I handed her a folded sheet of paper. "Inventory list. You've got 3 hours tomorrow. Bring a truck, bring help. But don't bring an attitude." She looked like she wanted to throw something at my face. But there were cops standing 5 feet away. And Gina's never been the type to play offense when there's paperwork involved. They left in silence. Avery pulled up 10 minutes later, holding 2 iced coffees and a look of satisfaction that could light a city block. "Was it everything you dreamed it would be?" she asked. "Better," I said, standing up slow. "But we're not done." I wasn't interested in just throwing them out. I wanted a clean burn. No ashes left to sweep up. So the next move? We went for the money. Noah's brokerage firm, as it turned out, had more holes than a screen door in hurricane season. Avery's friend at college worked in finance, the kind who wears suits for fun. She walked us through the public filings, the lawsuits pending, the silent bankruptcies creeping in the background. Then we sent an anonymous tip to the firm's biggest client. The result? Noah was invited to resign, which is the corporate way of saying, "Don't let the door hit you, but if it does, we hope it breaks something important." He found out 2 days later, on a bench outside the local library. Gina was in the middle of job hunting, which is hard to do when your last title was house tyrant, and your only reference is a daughter who won't return your calls. Speaking of Avery, she stayed quiet, didn't gloat, didn't post about it, just kept working her shifts, going to class, and checking in on me like she always had. I knew she wanted to ask about the rest of the plan, but she respected the silence, and I respected her for that. When the smoke cleared from the eviction and the job loss, we made the final move, the one they wouldn't come back from. We sued, not for money. That would have been too simple. We sued for elder abuse, financial coercion, attempted conservatorship under fraudulent grounds. And though we didn't have footage of the shove, we had the hospital report, the investigator's notes, and Avery's audio recordings. And we had one other thing. Leverage. Weston. Weston had been sloppy. Real sloppy. Turns out his trucking company wasn't just struggling. It was funneling cash from a shell company that wasn't technically under his name. But the address? That was mine. The old house I'd lived in before Slidell. Still on the books. Still in my name. Which made me responsible for any shady business tied to it. Until I hired a lawyer. A good one. The kind that smiles like a man counting his winnings before the cards hit the table. In court, we played it soft. Polite. Respectful. But when the judge saw the paper trail and heard the audio of Gina talking about my mental decline, the mood shifted. Gina's lawyer tried to spin it. She was concerned for her father's health. The judge didn't blink. She pushed him off a rooftop. "We can test that characterization. He landed in the hospital. It was an accident." She called a lawyer before calling 911. Silence. We settled. Fast. Quiet. And final. Gina gave up any claim to my estate. signed away power of attorney. Weston was forced to dissolve his company and repay a government fine that probably shaved 10 years off his retirement. Noah's accounts were frozen for review. The whole operation crumbled like a stale cracker. And me? I bought a new house. Not a mansion, just a nice place near Lake Pontchartrain with a screened-in porch and a yard full of stubborn grass. Avery moved in upstairs. Said it was temporary, but brought her whole bookshelf and a cat named Ford. Named after the author, not the truck. We didn't talk much about Gina anymore. Or Weston. Or Noah. Some people don't earn second chances. Some stories don't need sequels. But sometimes, at night, when the wind's just right and the jazz from the radio leaks through the hall, Avery knocks on my door. You up? I'm always up, I say. Old men don't sleep. We recharge. She curls up in the chair beside me, cat in her lap, and we sit there. No plans. No schemes. Just peace. The kind that only comes after war. We had the legal victory. We had the house. We even had the peace. But what we didn't have, what still gnawed at me like a loose tooth, was the question of why. Not why Gina did it. That was obvious. Money. Control. Power. But why now? Why the rush? Why the rooftop? Avery had theories. They were scared you'd change the will, she said. Or maybe Noah found your bank statements and thought you were about to die before they got a piece. But I knew Gina, and Gina wasn't impulsive. She was precise, cruel, but never sloppy, which meant something had changed. So we dug deeper. Avery found it, buried in an old email account I hadn't used in years. A message forwarded by mistake. A name I hadn't heard in decades. Judith, a real estate agent from Baton Rouge. One I hadn't seen since 2006, when I bought the house and asked her to keep the sale quiet. Apparently, she hadn't. Not entirely. The email had been a CC on an old chain between her and a banker friend, mentioning my name, the property, and the LLC I used to purchase it. The chain dated back months. Gina must have tracked the thread, pieced together the puzzle, and realized the truth. The house wasn't hers. The money wasn't theoretical. It was real, tangible, and out of reach, unless she made a move. So she pushed. And now, with her bankrupt and her reputation soured like bad milk, I finally understood the panic. She thought time was running out. Not on me, on her. Avery read the email twice, then sat back in her chair. Think she planned it all from the start. I shrugged. She's been greedy since she figured out what an ATM was. But this was fear. And now she's broke, publicly humiliated, and married to a man who can't get a job teaching budgeting at a lemonade stand. We should have left it there. But I'm not built that way. Because in a box under my bed, past the pension stubs, the letters from Vivian, the old photos, I kept a ledger. A simple little black book. Names, dates, numbers. Every loan I ever gave. Every time Gina cried poor. Every time Weston needed just a little help. 2 million, earned and protected in silence, while they fed off me like ticks. They took. I gave. Until now. Avery flipped through the ledger with a low whistle. This is a family history, she muttered. A very depressing one. It's time they paid it back, I said. With interest. She raised an eyebrow. Legally. Of course not. We didn't call lawyers. We called debt collectors. Well, not officially, but close. I knew a guy, Carmine. Used to work in collections before the recession hit. He owed me a favor from back in the power plant days when I rewired his trailer after a fire. I called him. Told him I had some people who owed money. Asked if he still knew how to lien without leaving fingerprints. You want him scared or scarred? He asked. Just embarrassed. I can do embarrassed. It started with Weston. He got a visit at his gym, some upscale chain with eucalyptus towels and smoothie bars. Carmine's cousin showed up in a windbreaker, dropped a manila envelope on the bench where Weston was stretching. Inside, a printed list of every fake invoice Weston had billed to his company. We got it from a disgruntled bookkeeper who hadn't been paid in 3 months. She was more than happy to forward us a copy. The envelope came with a note. Nice accounting. Wonder what the IRS would think. Weston went dark on social media the same day. Then we moved on to Noah. Avery found his LinkedIn password. Again, reused from one of Gina's logins. Gina Rules 1. She changed his headline to former analyst, currently seeking redemption. She also updated his resume to include fake jobs at Dunning-Kruger Consulting and Fraudco, LLC. It stayed up for 3 hours before he noticed. long enough for 3 recruiters to call him about unusual career decisions. He shut down his account and tried to file a complaint. But Avery used a proxy server in Estonia and a throwaway email that would vanish in 48 hours. "Remind me never to cross you," I said. "You're safe," she smiled. "Probably." We saved Gina for last. Not because she was the worst, but because her fall was going to be public. She had started a side hustle, coaching women on financial independence through a website called She Builds Bankrolls. Come, I kid you not. She charged $299 per webinar. We signed up for one. Avery's screen recorded the whole thing. All the buzzwords. All the recycled phrases she'd stolen from actual financial gurus. All the references to my father's poor decisions and what not to do with your inheritance. Then we sent the recording to the FTC, flagged it for misinformation, and emailed it anonymously to every attendee. Refund requests flooded in. The site went offline within 48 hours. Her name was burned. Her business folded. And the final cherry on top? We uploaded her full seminar to YouTube, titled, "How Not to Handle Money," a masterclass in self-destruction. The comments were brutal. Cruel? Maybe, but fair. Once the dust settled, we went quiet again. Let the smoke drift. Let them lick their wounds. Avery got back to her studies. I got back to reading detective novels and fixing radios. And the house, now truly quiet, started to feel like home again. But peace has a funny way of making you remember. One afternoon, I found myself in the garage, cleaning out boxes I hadn't touched in years. And there it was. A letter. Unopened. Postmarked from 2006. No return address. Just a single word on the front. Vivian. My late wife. My hands shook opening it. Inside, a single page. Her handwriting. Slanted, elegant, unmistakable. "Earl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know you've kept secrets. You always thought you had to protect us from the world. But I see the weight on you. I see the way you carry the silence. I'm not mad. I understand. But don't let it twist you into someone you're not. Tell Avery the truth when the time is right. And forgive them if you can. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Love always. V." I sat in that garage for a long time. Avery found me an hour later. Didn't say a word. Just sat down beside me on the concrete floor, her shoulder touching mine. "I was thinking," she said softly, "maybe next spring we take a trip. Just you and me." "Where?" "Anywhere. Somewhere with no cell service." I smiled. "You paying?" She snorted. "I'm the broke college student, remember?" "Well then," I said, standing with a groan, "I guess I better keep saving." The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope, like it thought it was better than the people who sent it. "The Cunninghams invite you to celebrate Avery's 20th birthday, family only. No return address. Just a printed card with gold script and enough passive aggression to power a small town." It was signed, Gina, Noah, Weston. They didn't ask. They summoned. I read it twice, looked up at Avery, and asked the obvious question. "What the hell is this?" She blinked. "I have no idea. They were up to something. That much was certain. They wouldn't just throw a party. Not for Avery. And definitely not on their own dime. Maybe they're trying to look like a happy family," she said. "Optics. Build a narrative. Pretend they're close to me. Close enough to take photos. Use them later. Pretend this never happened." "Exactly." I tossed the card in the trash. "So we're not going." "Oh, we're going," she said, grinning. "We're just not going as guests." Avery had that look again. The one that meant she already had a plan and I should just keep the engine running. She made a call to an old high school friend named Max who now worked for a catering company. "Can you get me 2 staff uniforms?" she asked. "Sure," he said. "But why?" "Because I'm bringing my grandfather to my fake birthday." The venue was a rented space on the lake. One of those modern boxes with big windows and no soul. I hadn't been to anything labeled a family event in years, and certainly not one that involved white linens and mood lighting. Avery and I arrived early, dressed in black slacks and white button-ups, pushing a cart full of actual supplies Max had let us borrow for cover. No one questioned us. Why would they? Staff is invisible by design. The guest list trickled in. Gina in a coral dress 2 sizes too small. Noah pretending he still had a title. Weston looking like he'd aged 10 years in 6 months. They were all there, laughing, toasting, playing happy. Then the speech started. Gina took the mic, her voice syrupy. "We're so proud of Avery. She's become such a smart, resilient young woman. I nearly choked on my gum. She went on, talking about family values, about how we stick together in hard times. There were nods from the crowd. Weston clapped. Noah looked pleased with himself. Then came the real kicker. "We've recently started a family trust," she said, smiling wide, "in Avery's name. A way to support her education and future." Avery froze beside me, her gloved hand tightening around the tray of hors d'oeuvres. "They're using your name to solicit money," I muttered. She nodded slowly. "And to get it, they need me to play along." But Avery wasn't built for pretending. So she walked to the front of the room, right in uniform, right in the middle of the speech, and plucked the mic out of Gina's hand like it was just another fork from the silver tray. The room fell silent. "I wasn't told about any trust," she said. "And I certainly wasn't told I was the guest of honor." Gina's smile cracked. "Avery, this isn't the time." "No, it's the perfect time," she cut in. "Because I want everyone here to know, I don't want a dime from these people. Not now. Not ever." Weston stepped forward, hands out. "Sweetheart, maybe we should." She ignored him. "You all tried to manipulate my grandfather. You tried to steal from him. You lied, schemed, and when that didn't work, you tried to erase what you did by pretending we're still a family." She turned to Gina. "You almost killed him." A few gasps rippled across the room. Someone dropped a wine glass. Gina reached for her. "Honey, you don't understand how complicated things got." Avery stepped back. "No, I understand perfectly. I understand you only show up for the money. And when it's gone, so are you." Then she handed the mic to me. I wasn't supposed to speak, but I never pass up a good closing line. "I want to thank everyone for coming," I said. "It's not every day you get to watch a con in high heels unravel in real time." And then, to Gina, "Next time you throw a party in someone's name, make sure they're not in the room." We walked out to silence, our server outfits still crisp, leaving behind an open bar, a half-eaten cake, and a family that had just realized the jig was up. Later that night, back at home, we sat on the porch swing. Avery had her feet up on the railing, the cat purring in her lap. "Think they'll try anything else?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but I doubt they've got the energy." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I don't want to hate them, but I don't know how to forgive them either." "You don't have to decide right now." Silence. Then, after a while, she said, "It's weird. I don't even feel bad for what we did. I thought I would." "You only feel bad when you steal something that didn't belong to you," I said. "We just took back what was ours." She nodded slowly. "Still feels surreal." "That's family," I said. "A maze full of mirrors. You think you see the truth, but most of it's just reflections." "Think they'll ever apologize?" I laughed. "Only if they can monetize it." I thought the war was over. We'd cleaned them out, embarrassed them publicly, and exposed every lie they built their lives on. But if there's one thing about people like Gina and Weston, it's that they don't learn. They just reload. It started with a letter. Not from them. From a bank. Avery brought it in one morning, still in her pajamas, holding it between two fingers like it smelled bad. "Grandpa, did you open a new line of credit last month?" I looked at the envelope. Chase Bank. My name, spelled correctly. But the address? A mailbox I hadn't used in 5 years. I opened it. Inside was a balance statement. $28,470 charged. All within 3 weeks. I hadn't spent a dime. Avery grabbed her laptop and started digging. "They used your name," she said. "Probably Social Security too. But the address, see here? It routes through a mail forwarding service in Baton Rouge." I rubbed my temples. Gina. Or Weston. Or Noah. Or all three. It wasn't just theft. It was identity fraud. And this time, they weren't going after my money. They were going after me. Trying to drag me through the mud. Make me look senile. Unstable. If I got flagged for fraud, my accounts could freeze. My credibility? Gone. My life. Ground to a halt. Avery called the fraud department. She put the phone on speaker. "Sir," the rep said, "this credit line was opened with full documentation, including a utility bill and photo ID. Can you send copies?" Avery asked. "We can mail them to the address on file." "No," she snapped. "Email them. Right now." We waited. 15 minutes later, the documents came through. The photo ID? A fake driver's license with my face, but an address that didn't exist. The utility bill? A water bill doctored to look official. Sloppy work. Too fast. Too desperate. I looked at Avery. They're trying to bankrupt me. They're trying to bury you. But we were already 6 moves ahead. I made a call to someone I hadn't talked to in 20 years. His name was Leon. A hacker back in the day, now an IT consultant for corporations who wanted their systems tested for leaks. We met when I helped rewire his workshop after a bad lightning storm. He said if I ever needed a favor, I had one. It was time to cash it in. He met us at a Waffle House outside Covington. Greasy, loud, the kind of place where people don't ask questions if you talk business over hash browns. I showed him the documents, gave him the details, told him I wanted one thing, proof. He nodded. I'll need 48 hours. He only needed 20. 2 days later, he called. Got your guy? Or guys. IP addresses traced back to Weston's house and Noah's work laptop. They used a VPN, but not a good one. Morons. Gina? She didn't touch the keys, he said. But the application was filed from her email. Looks like Weston and Noah ran the back end. She just lit the match. I hung up. Avery was pacing in the kitchen. Did he find them? I nodded. Yeah, and he found something else. What? They're broke. Again. Weston's been gambling. Noah's paying hush money to a woman he used to supervise. And Gina's being investigated for her fake financial coaching seminars. Avery blinked. So they tried to steal your identity to what? Cover their debt? Exactly. And this time, they weren't going to get away with it. We filed the fraud report, backed by Leon's findings. But we didn't stop there. Avery made a separate complaint with the State Financial Crimes Division. She attached a statement, clear, factual, and signed, with a timeline of events that made Gina, Weston, and Noah look like a criminal trio from a third-rate Netflix docuseries. 3 weeks later, the subpoenas started rolling out. Weston was the first to panic. He showed up at our house unannounced, looking like a man who hadn't slept since the 90s. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess, and his car parked half on the lawn. I need to talk to Dad, he said to Avery. She stepped outside. He doesn't talk to thieves. I didn't mean for it to get this far, Weston said, eyes darting. It was supposed to be temporary. You said that about the last 5 loans, she said. Didn't stop you from trying to kill him with paperwork this time. I didn't know Gina would go along with it. Avery laughed. Please. You'd throw your own mother into traffic for a Starbucks gift card. He looked away, shame rising slow. Tell Dad I'm sorry. She didn't answer. Just closed the door in his face. 2 days later, we got word. A formal investigation was underway. Gina had been questioned. Noah was suspended from his consulting job. And Weston's accounts were frozen pending further review. We didn't press charges. But the state did. Fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. It wasn't a long list. But it was enough. Gina cut a deal. Community service, fines, restitution. Weston and Noah got probation and mandatory financial rehab, whatever that means. They walked, technically, but they were done. Careers? Over. Credit? Shot. Reputations? Unrecoverable. And me? I spent that afternoon on the porch, drinking iced tea with Avery, watching clouds rolling off the lake. You think it's finally over? She asked. Feels like it, I said. But just in case, I changed my will that week. Put everything in Avery's name, ironclad and lawyer sealed. I also added a line that made her laugh out loud. If either Gina or Weston attempt to contact the executor, all funds shall be donated to a dog rescue in their name. A small, yappy breed. Petty, she said, but effective. Just like your grandfather. The first snow of the season came early that year. Light dusting over the roof, frosting the branches, making everything look cleaner than it really was. Snow lies like that. Covers the wreckage and calls it peace. But we weren't fooled. The legal firestorm had passed, the fraud charges settled, and the vultures clipped. But closure? That's not something you buy in court. It has to be taken. And there was one loose thread left dangling in our little family tragedy. Her name was Judith. The real estate agent who sold me the house all those years ago. The one who leaked the purchase in a chatty email chain to a friend who turned out to be a lender, who just happened to be Gina's old college roommate's husband. That careless trail started it all. Avery found her profile online. She was still working out of Baton Rouge. Still had the same cheesy glamour headshot and the same hollow 5-star reviews from people who clearly hadn't read the fine print. She'd been in the business forever. Respected, polished, and, based on her digital footprint, oblivious to the fire she'd helped spark. Should we talk to her? Avery asked one morning, pulling up Judith's profile on her phone. Or just let her keep living like none of this ever happened? I poured my coffee slow. Black, no sugar. Same way I like my payback. She's the reason Gina found the thread, I said. She cracked the vault. Then let's rattle it back. We drove to Baton Rouge that Saturday. I didn't call, didn't schedule, just walked into her office mid-afternoon with Avery at my side, casual but focused. Judith was exactly as I remembered, overdressed for a Saturday, phone glued to her hand, and teeth too white to trust. She looked up, eyes flicking between me and Avery. Can I help you? I sat down without asking. You already did. You just don't know it yet. She frowned. I'm sorry, have we met? You sold me a house in Slidell. 2006. Cash buyer. No mortgage. Told you to keep it quiet. That flicker behind her eyes. Recognition, then panic. You didn't, I said. Not really. You forwarded an email. Harmless enough. But that thread landed in the hands of my daughter. She used it to try and kill me. Judith's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Kill you. Push me off a skyscraper. Almost worked. Avery pulled out her phone. Want to hear the recording? Judith paled. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to remember something, Judith, I said. Loose lips sink more than ships. They sink lives. I didn't mean. I know. You didn't mean anything. That's what makes it worse. She looked at Avery like she might find mercy there. She didn't. We're not here to ruin you, Avery said. But you're going to help us now. Judith blinked. With what? You're going to host a listing, I said. And you're going to invite 3 very specific people to the open house. Her voice was barely a whisper. You're serious? I was serious when I wired your office for 200 amps in the middle of a heat wave. And I'm serious now. 1 week later, the invitation went out. It looked like a high-end property pitch. 5,000 square feet, lakefront, open layout, new kitchen, 5 beds, 6 baths, and a motivated seller. But the property didn't exist. Not really. The photos were from a model home in Texas. The address was a closed property being used for commercial demo. Empty inside. Staged like a trap. We used Judith's name on the invite. Her firm's logo. Her email. The guest list. Gina, Weston, Noah. The bait? An exclusive opportunity for select buyers tied to a new financial firm opening in Lafayette. They were told a local investor, yours truly, was liquidating assets and looking for quiet, under-the-table cash buyers. People who wouldn't ask questions. People like them. They RSVP'd within 12 hours. Avery shook her head when the last email came in. It's like watching moths flirt with a flamethrower. We arrived early the day of the showing. Judith let us in through the side, nervous as a cat in a rocking chair factory. Are you sure about this? She asked. I was sure the day my daughter reached for my wallet and forgot I was still breathing. She left through the back, like we agreed. And we waited. Noah showed first. He came alone, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big and sunglasses like he'd walked off a failed Netflix pilot. He looked around the empty foyer, clearly trying to size up who he was about to scam. Weston came next, carrying a fake briefcase and a real hangover. He looked exhausted, jittery, and underdressed. His hair was greasy and his eyes twitchy. And then Gina, fashionably late, dramatically overdressed, and walking like the queen of a kingdom that had already burned down. She spotted Avery first, then me. Her face fell apart in real time. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Hi, sweetheart, I said, smiling. Welcome to the open house. Weston looked like he wanted to bolt. Noah froze. I'm calling the cops, Gina hissed. Great, Avery said. We'll show them the email chain you replied to. Maybe they'll be interested in hearing about your last bank fraud stunt. You lured us here. No, I said. You lured yourselves. We gave you a stage. You brought the costumes. Gina turned on Noah. You said this was clean. He stepped back. I didn't know he was behind it. Yes, you did, Avery said, her voice flat. And you still showed up. Because you thought maybe, just maybe, there was still something left to steal. Weston dropped his briefcase. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. That's the point. They all stared. You can go, Avery said. We're not pressing charges. Not today. We're not sending this to the police. Not unless you ever contact us again. No calls. No emails. No letters. No Christmas cards. Not even a drive-by wave. You're blackmailing us, Gina said. No, I said. We're giving you a gift. Your last one. Avery stepped closer. You don't exist to us anymore. Not as family. Not as people. You're just ghosts now. And then we walked out. Left them standing there, surrounded by fake furniture, fake listings, and a future they had no part in. Back home, I opened a bottle of sparkling cider. We didn't drink much, but this felt like a moment. Avery raised her glass. To ghosts. I raised mine. And to those smart enough to stay dead. We clinked. And for the first time in years, I exhaled. 2 months passed without a whisper. No phone calls. No texts. No emails from unlisted domains. No strange packages or suspicious sightings. Gina, Noah, and Weston disappeared from our lives like spilled ink blotted clean. It was peaceful. Too peaceful. Avery went back to school full-time. She picked up an internship at a local museum, handling archives, cataloging artifacts, learning the difference between dusty and historic. She liked it. It gave her something solid, something real. I kept the house, fixed the wiring in the kitchen, rebuilt the deck out back, reorganized the basement, and finally threw out a box of VHS tapes I hadn't watched since Clinton was in office. Quiet work. Steady. And then I got a letter. This one wasn't from a bank or a scammer. It was handwritten. No return address, again. Just a plain white envelope and my name in cursive on the front. Inside, 1 page, thick stock. Expensive. Short. Earl, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I wouldn't believe it if the roles were reversed. But I am asking for one final conversation. In person. No schemes. No lawyers. No accusations. I've left the past behind. I just want to say what I should have said a long time ago. If you don't respond, I'll take the silence for what it is. Gina. I read it twice. Then I set it on fire in the kitchen sink. Not out of anger. Just clarity. Because that's what people like Gina do. They ruin the room, then want to come back and light a candle as if that fixes the smell. Avery found the ashes later. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have to. But a week later, something else happened. Avery got a call from her school advisor. Said someone anonymously donated $15,000 toward her tuition. Paid directly to the bursar. No name. No note. We traced the bank transfer. It came from a closed account. A burner. But Leon, our hacker friend, ran it through his maze and found it. Not back to Gina, but to a trust. A trust started by Vivian's sister years ago. A name only Gina would know to use. Why? Avery asked. Why do this now? I didn't have an answer. A week later, Avery was walking home from the museum when a car pulled up beside her. Slow. Familiar. It was Gina, but she didn't get out. She just rolled down the window and said, "Tell him I meant what I said." Then she drove off. No threats. No tears. No theatrics. Just a quiet drive-by apology. Avery told me that night. We were on the porch again. Stars above, cat purring on her lap. She looked different, Avery said. Not scared. Not fake. Just finished. Maybe she is. You believe that. I sipped my coffee. I believe people can run out of options. That's not the same as changing. Should we be worried? No, I said. But we shouldn't be nostalgic either. She leaned back. Feels weird. Like the story's over. But we're still sitting here waiting for the credits. That's because the worst betrayals don't end with a bang, I said. They end when the person you trusted most finally stops talking. I thought about Gina more than I wanted to admit. Thought about how she used to laugh as a kid, mouth full of ice cream, eyes wild with curiosity. Thought about the way she clung to Vivian's leg during thunderstorms. Thought about her college graduation, the proud smile, the fake speech about being grounded in family. It wasn't all lies. Not at first. But somewhere along the way, she traded truth for tactics. Learned that charm was faster than work. That guilt was easier than gratitude. That money was louder than love. And once you learn that, it's hard to unlearn. But maybe, just maybe, she was trying. Maybe the letter, the tuition donation, the silent drive-by, they weren't schemes. Maybe they were seeds. Not asking to be forgiven. Just noticed. Still, I didn't reach out. Because this story wasn't about redemption. It was about survival. Then, late one night, Avery knocked on my door. She looked different. Serious. She held up her phone. Weston's dead. I sat up. What? Overdose, she said. Found in a motel. News says he'd been living out of his car. I didn't speak. I just looked out the window at the stillness, the way everything felt frozen in place. He was awful, Avery said. But still, I know. She sat beside me. Do you think Gina knows? I nodded. She always knows. And sure enough, 3 days later, we got another letter. This one wasn't from Gina. It was from Noah. Typed. Neat. Cowardly. Weston's death shook us. We all made mistakes. Gina's not the same person. She talks about you. About Avery. I think she wants peace. Not as a game. Just something still and quiet before it's all too late. If that matters to you. Noah. Avery read it, set it down, and said, they're unraveling. I nodded. And looking for something soft to land on. Should we give it to them? No. But you don't seem angry. I'm not, I said. I'm past angry. I just don't negotiate with ghosts. We didn't attend Weston's funeral. Gina didn't invite us, and that was mutual. But we heard through a friend that it was small. Empty pews. A few ex-co-workers. One cousin. No real eulogies. Just silence and dirt and a closed casket. Weston burned every bridge on the way down. By spring, the snow melted, the grass came back, and our house started to feel full again. Not with people, with life. Avery's internship turned into a job offer. She'd be working full-time after graduation, managing archives, and eventually curating exhibits. She showed me the email offer like a kid showing off a perfect report card. I smiled. You're going to be fine, kid. She laughed. I had a good coach. I told her she'd be great at it. That the past was a story, not a sentence. And that maybe, just maybe, it was finally time to stop looking over our shoulders. We'd built our peace. Now we just had to live in it. The quiet didn't last. Peace is always on loan in this world. We rent it, stretch it, savor it, but it never truly belongs to us. The first crack came on a Sunday. Avery was out. I was in the garage, elbows deep in an old ham radio set I hadn't touched since Reagan. Cats snoring in the corner. Sunlight cutting through the open door like butter. Then I heard a knock. Not on the front door. On the garage frame. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap. I turned. It was Noah, wearing a windbreaker over a cheap suit and holding a bag from a local deli like it was a peace treaty. I didn't move. Didn't say anything. He looked older. Gray streaks in his hair. Puffier in the face. The kind of bloat that doesn't come from food. It comes from failure. Thought maybe you'd want lunch, he said. Just to talk. I stared. He cleared his throat. Gina's in the hospital. Nothing. He looked down. Pancreatitis. Bad one. Doc said it was touch and go. Still is. They're watching for infection. I leaned back on my stool, wiped my hands on an old rag. Why tell me? Because, he said, she wrote your name on the intake form. Not for emergency contact. Not for insurance. Just under the section that said, who matters most? That one caught me. Didn't break me. But it made the walls flex a little. She asked for you, he added. No cameras. No manipulation. Just asked. I didn't respond. So he placed the deli bag on the workbench and walked off. Didn't ask for anything else. Didn't wait. That night, I left the bag in the fridge. Unopened. I didn't go to the hospital. But I didn't sleep either. I kept looking at the ceiling, waiting for a reason. Not guilt. Not hope. Just some clarity. At sunrise, I made coffee. Strong, dark, bitter. The kind that makes you blink. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the edge of the table like it had answers. Avery walked in, hoodie on, hair still messy. She looked at me for a long second. She's dying, isn't she? I nodded. Maybe. She deserve it. No one does, I said. But she earned it. Avery's Saturday, you going to see her? Would it make a difference? Not to her, she said. But maybe to you. I hated how wise she was. So I drove. Gina was in a private room, 3rd floor. Window cracked open, soft beeping in the background. She looked thinner, older. Gray roots showing through dyed blonde. Tubes in her arms. A monitor clipped to her finger. Her eyes were closed. I stood in the doorway. Didn't say anything. Just listened to the sound of the machines. The air felt too clean. Too sterile. No room for noise, or lies, or memory. Then she opened her eyes. Slowly. And saw me. Her lips cracked. You came. I'm not here to forgive you. She nodded. Didn't expect it. We sat in silence. No dramatic music. No sobbing. Just quiet. After a while, she spoke again. I kept the letter Mom wrote you. The one you never read. My jaw tightened. I read it, she said. Over and over. I waited. I wanted to be better than you, she said, eyes glassy. But I was just meaner. Smarter in the worst ways. I always resented how much you loved her. How much she loved you. She coughed. winced, then continued. I was your daughter, but she was your everything. She was everything, I said. Gina nodded. I hated that. Still do. But I understand it now. More silence. She looked out the window. Avery has your spine. And her heart. You raised her right. I didn't raise her, I said. She chose right. She chose you, Gina said. That's what saved her. Then she looked at me, one last time, and said the words I never expected. I'm sorry. And this time, I believed her. She died that Friday. Quietly. Peacefully. No funeral. Her will had nothing in it but a request. Let them forget me. Avery and I honored it. No photos. No announcements. Just a final page turned without a crease. A month later, a lawyer contacted me. Estate stuff. Gina had nothing but some debt, a storage unit, and a few locked boxes. I let Avery handle it. She came back with a key. One of the boxes had this, she said. It was a safety deposit key from a credit union in Baton Rouge. Box number 413. We went together. The manager opened the vault, slid out a long metal drawer. Inside, a bundle of letters, all addressed to me, each envelope dated, spanning nearly 15 years. Avery stepped back. I'll wait outside. I opened the first one. 2010. I told you I was fine, but I wasn't. I was bitter, angry, jealous of how you still found peace while I spun in place. Next letter. 2012. I watched Avery laugh with you today. She trusts you. She believes in you. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just smiled, like always. And another. 2014. I used your name on a mortgage form. You didn't know. I justified it. Said you owed me. You didn't. I did. I owed you everything. They kept going. Year after year. No ask for forgiveness. No self-pity. Just pages of someone unraveling in real time. Confessions too raw to send. So she locked them away. The final letter? 2023. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't trust any tears. But don't ignore this either. I knew what I did. I hated who I became. But I never hated you. I just didn't know how to be like you. Gina. I didn't cry. Didn't get poetic. But I kept the letters. All of them. Tucked them in the same drawer where I kept Vivian's. A box full of things I never said. Never needed to. Because the story was finished now. Not redeemed. Not rewritten. Just done. When a storm ends, it doesn't always leave behind wreckage. Sometimes it just takes everything. And what it leaves is silence. After Gina passed, it was like someone finally turned the volume down on a bad memory. Her face stopped showing up in nightmares. Her name stopped surfacing in conversation. She was still part of the past, but no longer part of the problem. Noah vanished. We heard through a mutual connection that he left the state. Moved west. Got into real estate, ironically. Selling homes he'd never be invited into. I never heard his voice again. Never wanted to. Weston was already dead. And Gina? She stayed dead. And not just physically. She stayed out of our thoughts, our plans, our futures. Her ashes were scattered by someone else's hands. The woman who once held a family hostage with guilt and greed now lived only in footnotes and shadows. I thought that would be the end of it. But revenge has a funny way of giving you clarity when you least expect it. It doesn't whisper you won. It just stops whispering entirely. Avery finished school in the spring. Graduated summa cum laude, whatever that means. I just call it smart as hell. She wore her gown like it was armor and walked across the stage like she owned the building. When they called her name, I stood and clapped once. Just once. Because that's how you mark the kind of moment that doesn't need fireworks. After the ceremony, we drove home in silence. Windows down. No music. The kind of silence that meant everything. She moved into her own place 2 weeks later. Just across town. Close enough to swing by. Far enough to stand on her own. I helped her carry the furniture up 3 flights of stairs. The cat supervised. Ford had gotten fat, slow, and somehow smug. Like he knew we didn't run the house anymore. We had pizza on the floor. No chairs yet. Just old blankets and soda and plastic cups. She looked around the empty apartment and said, I think I'm finally out. Of the house. No, she smiled. Of the past. I nodded. Good. You? I've been out, I said. Since the day you pulled me off that ledge. That summer was different. We didn't talk about revenge. Didn't whisper about surveillance, lawyers, old emails, or fake listings. There were no more traps to set. No more battles to win. I started volunteering at a local radio museum. Fixing up antique transmitters. Teaching kids how to solder. They asked me if I wanted to give lectures. I told them no. I just like making things work again. Avery came by on weekends sometimes. We didn't say much. Didn't have to. That's the thing about surviving something together. You don't need updates. You just need to exist in the same space now and then, quietly agreeing that things used to be worse. One night, late August, she called. Said she found something in one of Gina's old safety deposit boxes we hadn't cracked open. A flash drive. I met her the next morning at her place. She already had her laptop open, drive plugged in. "You want to see this?" she asked. I didn't answer. Just sat down beside her. The folder was labeled Exit. Inside, one video. We clicked it. Gina's face appeared on screen. No makeup, no filter, just her, sitting at a kitchen table in what looked like a rental house. Date in the corner read March 12th, 2023. A few months before she died. She looked into the lens like she'd been staring at it for hours. Then she spoke. "If you're watching this, then either I'm dead or I finally got brave enough to tell the truth. Maybe both. I lied. A lot. I stole. I blamed. I twisted people into shapes they couldn't hold. And when they broke, I pretended it wasn't my fault. I hurt my father. I hurt Avery. I hurt people who loved me. And I knew it. Every time. But I couldn't stop. Because stopping meant admitting I wasn't a victim. I was a villain. So here it is. The only thing I have left, the truth. Everything you suspected? True. The fraud. The push. The letters. The plans. All of it. Me, Noah, Weston, we were in it together. No excuses. Just truth. I kept these confessions because I thought maybe, one day, I'd need them. But the truth is, I just didn't want to die being misunderstood. So now you understand. I was everything you said I was. But I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to be someone worth loving back. I'm sorry. Goodbye. The screen went black. We sat in silence. Avery reached over, closed the laptop gently, then said, "Let's never watch that again. Deal." We buried the drive in the backyard. Literally. Dug a hole beside the bird feeder and tossed it in like a time capsule full of failure. Covered it with dirt. Stamped it down with our boots. No gravestone. No ceremony. Just a lesson learned and sealed. "I want to ask something," she said, wiping her hands. "Go ahead. If she hadn't pushed you, do you think she still would have tried to take everything?" I thought about it. "No," I said. She would have waited. Let time do the work. Trusted the slow rot of family dynamics. So the shove wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. Avery nodded. "Makes sense." Fall came. The leaves turned, then fell. The lake started to chill. And life got regular. Not boring. Just still. I found a rhythm. Walked every morning. Coffee at 7. Workbench by 9. Back porch by noon. Jazz on the radio at night. Same records, same groove. Peace earned is peace protected. Avery got promoted. Took over a small exhibit project. She invited me to the opening. I wore a clean shirt and brought flowers like a proud, overdressed chauffeur. She gave a speech, thanked her team, then looked out at the crowd and said, "I had a rough few years. But someone reminded me you can either be a victim of your story or the one who rewrites it." And that was it. No names. No drama. Just a line delivered with precision and quiet victory. I watched people nod. They didn't know what she'd survived, what we buried. They just saw a woman in control. And that was enough. Months later, I got one final letter. This time, from a lawyer. A small account had been activated. In my name. A holding trust. Not large. Maybe a few thousand. Funded by Gina. Left in Avery's name. Marked, emergency only. Just in case I was wrong, and he needs one more reason to forgive me. I transferred it to the dog rescue. Let the memory of it feed something better. And that was that. The last time we spoke about the whole thing, me, Avery, the family that tried to dismantle us, it was a joke. She was watching TV, some drama where the villain fakes a heart attack to get back into the good graces of their victim. Avery rolled her eyes and said, "Too late. You had your shot." Then she looked at me and added, "But if you try anything, I'm tossing you off a taller roof." I smiled. "Fair," I said. "Still," she added, "I'd call the ambulance faster than she did." And that's how I knew we were finally free. End of story. Nobody walked away. Nobody forgave. Nobody forgot. But nobody won.